I joined a United Women in Faith circle because one of my church members asked me to come to a circle meeting.
I joined United Women of Faith because I was seeking connection and friendships.
Well, I was introduced to that by Julie Ramka in 2018. Tapped me on the shoulder one day in church, and that's back when we had bulletins, and she had it circled and said, "I'll see you Tuesday night." And I went and I loved it. I never looked back.
I found a community of women whose purpose is to faithfully advocate, nurture, and educate women, children, and youth.
I wanted other women at St. Andrew's Church to know me, and I wanted to know them. Many have become my mentors.
Me personally, I like the sisterhood of being in fellowship with like-minded women in a supportive community.
There I gained leadership skills through their studies, through educational and spiritual reading programs, and through experience.
I love to learn from them about God, life, and service. The monthly meetings are a great way to get to know other women from different ages and stages of life, and to strengthen my faith because the women also share a message about God.
Some of the benefits for me are the educational opportunities through workshops, seminars, and conferences.
And I enjoy a service-minded sisterhood with these women.
I also wanted to be part of a group that was regularly serving, and United Women of Faith is just that. At St. Andrew's, they organize Granny's Attic, the Wonder Walk, and much more, which are events that impact people in our community.
Enables a person to get involved in missions supporting women, youth, and children. One of our local missions is Cornerstone. We support Cornerstone through Wonder Walk, diaper drives, and I personally have worked in the garden. We also have a reading program that supports education for mission, leadership, nurturing for the community, social action, and spiritual growth.
We, United Women in Faith, believe faith, hope, and love in action can transform the life of women, children, and youth.
If you think you're too busy to join the group, you're not. I don't go every month. The ladies know I can't make it every month, and they welcome me when I can go. It's just nice knowing that I'm part of a loving group of women. I also think it's really cool to know that this group is not just at St. Andrew's, but it's at other churches across the country and around the world. It's neat to think that I'm part of a team or a force of women working globally as the hands and feet of Jesus. It's amazing to learn and hear about what other women in faith are doing in their part of the world and to be connected to their efforts.
I highly recommend getting involved. I highly recommend joining a group.
So we are celebrating today United Women of Faith in our church. It is a ministry that is very vibrant and making a huge difference in our community in the work that we do. And we're really proud about that ministry. So today we are letting you hear about it so that you can decide if you too want to be a part of this ministry. And I'm pleased to say we have a guest speaker today. We feel very blessed, who's going to tell you about this ministry worldwide, the history of it. But let me tell you about her first. So come a little closer, Jane. So this is Jane Darling, and she is the co-leader of the Florida Conference of Northeast Central. She's also the president of our local United Methodist Women in Faith at St. Paul's UMC in Ocala. She was also the president of the North Central United Women of Faith, but then we did kind of a realignment recently. 25 years ago, she joined United Women of Faith in Texas. She and her husband Ed moved here. She's a retired librarian. She has a fur baby named Ocho. And they love to travel, and they're passionate about Gator baseball. This is a good woman. So would you greet her as she's going to tell us a little bit about United Women of Faith? Thank you.
Good morning. I bring you greetings from the Northeast District and also from my own unit at St. Paul's United Methodist Church in Ocala. Shari and I first met when we were both brand new district UWFaith leadership team members several years ago, and we've been roommates and travel buddies ever since. So thank you, Shari, and thank you, Pastor Jane and Pastor Gary, for having me here this morning. I'd like to share some of my journey of faith as a member of United Women in Faith. And I offer this knowing that everybody's journey is different. And while I can become aware of experiences of those around me, I can never fully comprehend the depth of experiences that I myself have not lived. So, how have I moved forward in faith? Let's go back to the beginning. The simple answer to the question, how did I become a United Methodist woman, is that I'm a woman and I'm a United Methodist. But there's more to it, much more to it. Allow me to introduce you to my very dear friend, Nancy Monroe. This is all her fault. My husband, Ed, and I met Nancy and her husband, Ron, at the First United Methodist Church of Coppell, Texas, where they are still members. We all sang in the choir, we belonged to the all-comers Sunday school class, and eventually we became traveling companions sharing vacations. And one day, Nancy, who is a third-generation member of UMW, invited me to the first meeting of a new evening circle. And since I was new in town, I thought it would be fun to meet other women in the church and have some social time. And bam, just like that, I was a United Methodist woman. But was I? I really had no idea what UMW was all about, but I learned. I learned what bold, courageous women could do to change the world. So let me share a little history, or herstory, with you. In the early 1800s, various groups of women made several attempts to organize for mission work, but for one reason or another, they were unsuccessful. But during the Civil War, women really began to understand their value as they organized nursing and relief efforts. After the war, they took what they had learned and applied it to other areas, convinced that as followers of Jesus, they had work to do. And in 1869, the women at the Tremont Street Methodist Episcopal Church in Boston were ready to get going. Their first meeting did not go as planned. Torrential rain kept all but 6 of the women from attending. The speakers, wives of missionaries serving in India, had to huddle in the doorway until the janitor unlocked the door to let them in. But the women in attendance learned that women in India were dying for lack of medical care because they were not allowed to be treated by male doctors. They learned that educational opportunities for girls were non-existent, and they vowed to do something about it. In covenant with God, they formed an organization and elected officers, and the Women's Foreign Missionary Society was born. When the men of the church suggested that the women could raise the funds and the men would administer the funds, the women announced that they were perfectly capable of administering their own funds, thank you very much, and they called it Women's Work for Women. And they sent educator Isabella Thoburn and Dr. Clara Swain to India. Years later, in recognition of those 6 bold women, the congregation of the Tremont Street Methodist Episcopal Church installed stained glass windows honoring them. So while on vacation with Nancy and Ron in Boston a few years ago, we set out to find the Tremont Street Methodist Episcopal Church. We found the right address, but it was the New Hope Baptist Church. And as we're wandering around, peering at the windows, a car pulls up and the driver asks us what we're doing. We explain, and the man hops out of his car and announces that he is the pastor of the church, and he invites us in to see the windows. The New Hope Baptist Church housed an African-American congregation which had purchased the Tremont Street Methodist Episcopal Church and lovingly preserved the building and its windows in recognition of its significance to the United Methodist Church. Sadly, the church was for sale as the aging congregation could no longer afford to maintain a historic building. Eventually, the building was converted to condominiums, but the windows have been relocated to various places within the New England Conference and at the national headquarters of United Women in Faith in New York City. And today, the Isabella Thoburn College and the Clara Swain Hospital still serve women and girls in India. I found the boldness of these women inspiring, and so I pursued more opportunities to learn through our circle meetings, through the reading program, and the School of Christian Mission, known today as Mission U. Over its long history, the many predecessor organizations that are now United Women in Faith have been champions of social justice. Deaconesses traveled to China to work against the practice of binding women's feet. They established girls' schools in Africa and Korea. In the U.S., they sent teachers to the South to educate newly freed slaves. The women met new immigrants on the docks in New York City as their ships arrived, helping them to navigate the new world. And they spoke in opposition to the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. And the more I learned about how these bold women have stood up for those marginalized by society, the more I realized how vitally important it is for me to be a part of that. With Nancy, I participated in Assembly in 2018, a quadrennial gathering of United Methodist women from around the world. And while at Assembly, we heard from many bold women, including Marian Wright Edelman of the Children's Defense Fund, and Lema Gaboe, one of 3 women sharing the 2011 Nobel Peace Prize for their work in the women's peace movement, which ended the Second Liberian Civil War. But for me, the truly inspiring speaker was Harriet Jane Olsen, who at the time was UMW's executive director. She is petite, unassuming, and soft-spoken. But when she speaks, she is powerful in her conviction that women working together can move mountains. If this diminutive woman could speak so boldly, surely I could find my own voice. Assembly 2018 was held in Columbus, Ohio, which is significant. In the early 1940s, the Methodist Church created a segregated central jurisdiction for African American churches, while white churches were organized into 4 geographic jurisdictions. In response, the women's division of the Methodist Church stated that they would only hold meetings in places where their members could be free of any form of racial discrimination. When hotels in St. Louis refused to accommodate African American members of the First National Assembly of Methodist Women in 1942, Assembly was moved to Columbus. So it was appropriate that the celebration of 150 years of women in mission should return there. Assembly is also where we learn our advocacy and mission focuses. One of those campaigns is ending mass incarceration and the criminalization of girls of color. I was unaware of this issue, but wanting to gain a deeper understanding of it, Ed and I met Nancy and Ron in Montgomery, Alabama. Montgomery is a city of contradictions. It was the first capital of the Confederacy. It's the birthplace of Hank Williams, and for a time it was the home of F. Scott and Zelda Fitzgerald. It was the location of the first civilian flying school operated by the Wright brothers, who recognized that they couldn't sell flying machines if nobody knew how to fly them. Montgomery is also the epicenter of the civil rights movement. In the center of town, there's a fountain which stands on the spot of a former slave market. Across the street is a statue of Rosa Parks waiting for a bus. A few blocks up the street is the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, which is where Dr. Martin Luther King first started preaching. It's also the home of the Equal Justice Initiative's National Memorial for Peace and Justice, which honors more than 4,000 known lynching victims, which is a sobering reminder of this very painful history. That experience was overwhelming and profoundly moving. I came away from it resolved to speak out for justice, to be the bold woman that God calls me to be. This is my story, and this is my song. This is how I grew into being a bold woman of faith. I have found my voice, and I am moving forward in faith to go where God leads me. And I am surrounded by the bold women in my congregation. They live out love in action through projects such as Undy Sunday, the Angel Tree, providing meals for the shelter at Interfaith Emergency Services, and support for the women at the Lowell Correctional Institute. I'm also surrounded by you, the bold women in this room, who move forward in faith on a daily basis, putting love into action. To God be the glory, great things she has done through bold women. and I am proud to call you my sisters. Like the women at the Tremont Street Methodist Episcopal Church, we are followers of Jesus, and we have work to do. We raise our voices for women, children, and youth when they have no voice of their own. We stand on the shoulders of the bold women who have gone before us, and we walk shoulder to shoulder today, blending our voices together. We are bold women united in faith. We are love in action. As united women in faith, we have the power to change the world. Let's get going.
I think any United Methodist Church will tell you that it is the United Women of Faith that makes sure that they don't get stagnant or inward, because they're always fighting for justice. We've got 2 amazing circles here at the church that meet every second Tuesday of the month, one in the morning at 10 and one in the evening at 6:30. And these are amazing groups, and anybody can join these groups at any time. In addition, we're starting a new circle that's going to be every 3rd Monday of the month at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And we're even in conversation about a possible 4th circle, because this is an opportunity, a way for us to be in work for social justice. This is a way that we build literally into our routine how to be in service, because that's what Christ asked of us. It's not enough to believe. There should be action connected to our words. And so we are so proud and grateful for the circles at our church. If you would like to read more about them, you can go to our website at saumc.net. Just go to events and then go to registration, and you can actually register to be a part of one of those circles. I believe it would be a blessing to you. I also want to thank Deb and Suzanne and Shari, who shared their testimony about how this group has impacted them here at this church. We're so grateful for all of our circles. Now I want to slightly shift. Next week, we are starting a new sermon series. When you came in, you've got the flyer No Longer Stuck, and we'll tell you more about that next week. But on this flyer, there is a question, and we're going to try to take a temperature of the church and find out how everybody is. So this is meant for you to fill out. So the question is, sometimes we can feel stuck in life. Where are you today? And you have 3 options, and you just have to take a pen in front of you and mark one of those off. The options are, I'm okay with this season of life. I'm good. Or I'm ready for a new season. That can mean a lot of different things, right? And then the last one is, I'm feeling stuck in life, because we all know it. There's certain times when we all get stuck. So what I'm going to ask of you is just to mark that off, whichever one you're at. You can circle it, mark it any way you want. And then when you leave today, there'll be a basket out there that you can put them, drop them in the basket. And if you're going out the side door, there'll be a basket by the side door as well. And each week we'll be taking these questions, different kinds of questions throughout September, and then I will be reporting on the temperature of the church next Sunday based on these surveys. So let's now continue to worship.